In the drama of life, events unfold in seconds or minutes, in hours or days, over months and years. Others have endings to be seen only by the future. The scientific information upon which these stories are based is documented and authentic. Whether it be the saving of a single life or the well-being of a multitude, each has a purpose. The American Chemical Society presents Objective. On July 12, 1945, what has often been called the greatest fraud ever perpetrated first came to light. From his cell in a Holland prison, an unknown and unheralded Dutch painter, under arrest for wartime collaboration with the enemy, tossed a figurative bombshell into the international world of art. The prisoner, Han van Meegeren, restive from his incarceration and brooding over what he considered critical injustices to his known works, impulsively revealed himself as the author of Great Art Finds, credited to the Dutch masters Vermeer and De Hooch. Van Meegeren's claim of a brazen and fantastically successful fraud began a chain reaction of events and incidents that would continue for more than a dozen years and resulted in the most extensive scientific investigation of an art forgery ever undertaken. What you will hear are the scenes, implications, emotions, facts, and details recreated as the study of extensive documentation indicates they occurred. The charges and countercharges sparked by the startling and unexpected confession made earlier by the painter and convicted collaborationist Van Meegeren have already begun to fly, but one thing is evident. The attitude most generally encountered is one of disbelief. It is, however, agreed that the vast implications of Van Meegeren's statement will oblige Dutch legal authorities to launch a full and complete investigation. We'd like to express our appreciation for governmental cooperation, which makes it possible to bring you now the first on-the-spot interview with the main figure in this newly bred controversy. Mr. Van Meegeren, as you're no doubt aware, most art authorities are extremely skeptical about your claim of having painted works generally attributed to Vermeer and De Hooch.
Well, of course. Skepticism is their only defense. Refusing to accept the facts is their only salvation. Remember, these are the experts who castigated my work with their slashing criticism. And these are also the experts who, believing the disciples of Emmaus to be the work of Vermeer, claimed it to be the most beautiful Vermeer in the world. Now, do you expect the experts to gracefully or easily admit that the man they methodically condemned to mediocrity is the same man they unrealizingly acclaimed for his greatness? I've made fools out of them, and they'll hide their reputations with a mask of skepticism until it's torn away. And believe me, it will be torn away.
For several months, the claims and counterclaims rebounded and resolved themselves only in confusion. The paintings in question had since 1937 been sold for an aggregate sum of more than $2 million. Were Van Meegeren's claims of authorship to be substantiated, this fortune in art would overnight dissolve. And so the artistic post-mortem continued with the anatomy of the alleged fraud divulging new bits to deepen and further cloud the controversy. Purchasers thought back and remembered the man who had first approached them with the great art. The following transcription of an interview obtained with him will readily indicate that Mr. X, as it is necessary to call him, did not support Van Meegeren's claim. Now, Mr.
Now, just a minute. My understanding was the use of names would not be necessary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And let me hasten to add that my hesitancy to divulge my name is in no manner connected with any fear of incrimination. Thus, Van Meegeren's claims notwithstanding, I can assure you that the works in question are authentic and as represented by me at the time of sale.
Well, how were the paintings represented, sir?
Well, as authenticated Dutch masters, of course.
Well, no, I understand that, but how did they come to be in your possession is what I mean. Well, these were paintings previously unknown and uncatalogued. How were they discovered?
In a manner very common in the discovery of art treasures. In my capacity as trustee of a foreign estate, I came across a number of paintings that had been stored for many years, perhaps many generations. One canvas in particular, as a matter of fact, the one known now as Disciples of Emmaus, struck me with its very great beauty.
And did you immediately recognize it as a Vermeer?
Of course not. And by the way, let me just say I take exception to the implication of that question. I have had no connection with the questioned paintings other than as a representative of an estate. I am not an art expert, and certainly not qualified to attempt an authentication. The paintings appeared to be of unusual quality and quite old. They suggested certain great Dutch masters to me, and were later authenticated through my efforts by recognized authorities.
Mm-hmm. Well, who did confirm the Disciples at Emmaus was an original Vermeer?
A very noted art historian, a man named Braidwee. Braidwee, as a matter of fact, wrote the first certificate acknowledging the Disciples as a Vermeer.
Exactly how did this Braidwee ascertain the authenticity of the painting? Was it subjected to scientific tests, would you know?
I didn't question Braidwee's techniques. Evidently, the style is revealed in the photograph.
Photograph? Oh, Braidwee authenticated this painting not from the actual canvas, but from a photograph of it.
I'm certain he had opportunity to see the original on many later occasions.
Yeah, but the actual confirmation was done through a photograph.
Evidently, Braidwee considered it sufficient. Now, please, let us understand something. This is an interview, not an interrogation. Is that correct?
Oh, it's an interview, of course, but...
Now, please, no buts or ifs or other qualifications. I'm not going to be placed in the position of defending myself. I'll make this statement, and then I believe there's nothing more to be said. The paintings in question, for which I acted as agent, have been viewed by numerous authorities, and not one of these experts has seen fit to question their authenticity. Only the fantastic publicity-seeking attack of a convicted collaborator has clouded the legitimacy of their derivation, and that bizarre attack is without foundation. Now, if you please, I'm a very busy man.
But Van Meegeren's tenacious claims could not be completely mitigated by denials and indignation. Too many contentions and details offered support to Van Meegeren as painter of the Vermeers for the matter to be summarily dismissed. Dutch legal authorities, under the chairmanship of Justice G. J. Wiarda, carried out exhaustive inquiries, and on the 11th of June 1946, 4 experts were appointed to begin what was to become the most extensive scientific investigation of an art forgery ever undertaken. The experts were Dr. W. Fronches, advisor on chemistry to the Dutch Minister of Justice, Professor H.J. Plenderleaf, head of the British Museum Research Laboratory, F.I.G. Rowlands, head of London's National Galleries Laboratory, and P.B. Cormans, head of the Central Laboratory of Belgium Museums. The recording to follow was made shortly after the formation of this investigating body. What was the implication of the formation of this research group?
Well, certainly no ambiguous implications. There is contention concerning the authorship of certain artworks. It is up to this body to resolve that contention.
Well, do you consider yourselves, art experts?
Well, if you mean by that, do we consider ourselves art critics or historians? The answer is most decidedly no. We are basically chemical scientists who have applied our specialty in the field of art. The tests we will make on the questioned paintings will take place in laboratories and will involve firm scientific methods. We're not concerned with evaluating the quality of the art involved, only in determining whether or not they are forgeries.
Mm-hmm. Well, specifically, what means will you employ?
Ultraviolet and infrared photography, analyses of pigments, X-rays, comparison of paints existing in the works with those found in Van Meegeren's studio, and probably a number of techniques it may become necessary to develop as we progress.
Well, sir, can you explain how these frauds, if frauds they prove to be, could have been accepted on the basis of, let's say, educated opinions?
No comment on that.
Well, then let me ask you something else. Is it possible that these are indeed frauds and yet such well-executed fakes that this scientific investigation might be unable to make an exact determination?
No, I do not believe it is possible to create any fake that would resist the probings of the chemicals, radiation, lights, and other means at our disposal. If the paintings are the work of Van Meegeren and not Vermeer, De Hooch, and Hals, we'll find it out.
Though the scientific investigation would not be fully completed for many years, it was only a matter of months before sufficient evidence was found to support Van Meegeren's claim of authorship. The charges of collaboration for which he had received a prison term were changed to forgery, and a trial was held. The small, brooding man, his face lined beyond the years, accepted the verification of his impulsive confession with mixed emotions.
Vengeance. All of this for vengeance. The disciples represented the master stroke in my plan for vengeance. I conceived the painting for many years, fragment by fragment. It took 6 to 7 months to accomplish it, in my studio, alone, living apart from the world. Every detail of the older painting beneath and of my modern composition were engraved in my mind and heart. In fact, I knew that later, in the event of success, the world would be unwilling to admit that Van Meegeren, a third-rate painter, could be the author of such a work. Had I not been arrested as a collaborator, and had my temperament not brought me in July of 1945 to the stupid admission that I was the author of The Disciples and other fakes, I intended giving in my testament all the proof which would have forced the world to recognize me as the author of The Disciples. As for the other paintings, I neither conceived nor carried them out with the same care. What was the use? They sold just the same. Secondly, once the truth was admitted about The Disciples, only a little time would be required for the recognition of the other fakes, of which I am not, incidentally, so proud.
There was no longer doubt. Van Meegeren, genius, third-rate painter, whatever, had in fact created some half-dozen paintings that had been accepted as the work of masters long past. There was no doubt. The scientific body had corroborated his assertion with too many facts. Chemical analyses had revealed traces of a blue pigment not known in the time of the Dutch masters. His intimate knowledge of the older original paintings underlying his own was verified by X-ray techniques. Resins he had developed to age the paintings artificially were identified in the works. These resins, not known before 1900, proved conclusively that the paintings could not have been painted in the 16th century. Invisible areas of the light spectrum had been utilized to reveal numerous repaints and overpaints he had meticulously described. In October 1947, Van Meegeren began serving a sentence received for his conviction on the charges of forgery. On December 30th of that same year, he was claimed by a heart attack. And yet so extensive were the technical aspects of his fraud that scientific investigation into its many ramifications continued for years to come and was not until 1957 brought to a close. But it is in the words of Dr. Paul Cormans, director of the Central Laboratory of the Belgium Museums and member of the original scientific investigation group, that we find the terse, factual summation of Van Meegeren.
In my personal opinion, Van Meegeren was indisputably the greatest forger of all times. As an artist, he achieved the best and the worst, since his natural gifts were warped by the line of least resistance, the lust for gain and luxury. These same characteristics are evident in his fakes. An immense conceit and contempt, if not hatred, of the official art world made him create the beautiful painting of the disciples at Emmaus.
And so the small, brooding man, convicted by his motivations, is remembered for the beauty he created despite them. The American Chemical Society has presented Objective. This program has been transcribed.
Objective has come to you through the worldwide facilities of the United States Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.